Incredible twist. Marine discovers little girl with his lost dog tag. What unfolded will move you. Jake Thompson stood outside the corner store, the sun glinting off his truck's dusty hood. He pushed his hands deep into his pockets, letting the familiar grease-stained fabric ground him in the mundane. He was a Marine, damn it. One of the brave few sent into battle. Now? He was barely a shadow, filling tires with air and listening to the hum of engines instead of the echoes of warfare. Every laugh in town was tinged with the sound of gunfire that never truly left his mind. As he turned to head inside, a flash of movement caught his eye. A little girl played in the park nearby, her laughter ringing like a distant bell in his hollow chest. "What are you doing here, Jake?" he murmured to himself, feeling an inexplicable urge pulling him towards her. Her scruffy puppy pattered around her feet, tail wagging like a flag of sheer joy. A simple thought. Was he envious of that happiness? Was it a fleeting glimpse of what he had lost along with the innocence of his youth? Jake stepped closer, the smile on the little girl's face lighting up the air around him. "Hi," she called, her cheeks flushed from the morning sun. He felt something stir in the depths of his heart, a sense of connection. But he hesitated. This little girl had no inkling of the battles he fought daily, the invisible demons that crawled beneath his skin. He could almost hear the familiar fumbles of conversation he could never perfectly master. Should he even talk to her? And then as he crouched to pet her puppy, his gaze flickered down to her neck. It glinted so bright it seemed to demand attention. A dog tag. His dog tag. The very one he had thought lost in the sands of a distant desert, a piece of his identity now worn as jewelry by a child. The sight knocked the wind from his lungs. He drew in a sharp breath, visions of dangerous evenings and lost comrades flashing through his mind, the weight of history and consequence piling on his shoulders. Where did you get that?" he stammered, his voice thick with disbelief and dread. She looked at him, a wise understanding in those innocent eyes, as though she could see beyond his guarded heart. "This? I found it on the ground near my house," she chirped. But did she understand the heartache it carried? Did she know what it meant to him? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake felt his world teetering on the precipice of decision. He could lose himself in this innocent conversation, pour the remnants of his broken heart into this brave little girl, maybe even find purpose again. But would that mean abandoning the flickering flame of hope he felt for his own daughter, the little girl he hadn't properly connected with since returning home? Would she even understand if he extended his heart to someone else? The moral conflict twisted around him like barbed wire, squeezing tight with every second. He wanted to act, to morph from his static existence into something worth being proud of. Yet fears clawed at him. What would happen if he failed this little girl in her moment of need, just as he felt he had failed those he left behind? The tension fluttered in the air around them, shadows dancing in the periphery of his mind as he met her gaze. A glimmer of hope entwined with the weight of his past, an unbearable burden in more ways than one. As the sun hung high above, he took a deep, shaking breath, knowing that whatever he chose next could either bridge or deepen the already widening chasm in his life. Jake's heart thudded in his chest, a relentless drum echoing the conflict raging within. The sight of the dog tag glimmering against the girl's small, sun-kissed neck jolted him back to the life he once lived. A life where purpose was clear, and courage meant confronting reality head-on, not retreating into the shadows of despair. As a Marine, he had trained for moments of chaos, armed with strategies and camaraderie. Yet here he was, a soldier caught in a war of emotions, struggling with a decision that felt paradoxically trivial and monumental. "Hi there. My name is Jake," he finally managed, the words scraping against the wall he had built in his throat. A tiny iceberg of self-doubt floated in his chest, but the little girl's enthusiastic smile melted it away just a fraction. She urged the puppy closer, and instinctively, Jake reached out to touch the soft fur. "Do you want to play?" she asked, her giggle punctuating the air and momentarily soothing the turmoil that swirled inside him. He hesitated, the demons whispering warnings of involvement, yet the yearning for connection pressed him forward. "Sure," he found himself saying, driven by an impulse that felt both frightening and liberating. As the girl tossed a ball for the puppy, their laughter intertwined, bridging the gap between worlds that seemed so far apart. In those moments, a flicker of warmth ignited something deep within him, a forgotten eagerness. While the girl bounded after her puppy, Jake observed the innocent joy in her movements. It reflected the child he'd promised himself he would be more present for, the daughter who remained a haunting echo in his mind. Guilt surged anew, sending icy fingers through his heart. How could he be here, playing with this child, when his own was still hurting from his absence? He wrestled with the awareness that he hadn't battled the ghosts of his past, nor had he equipped himself to face the future. He had concealed himself so deeply behind his own failures, automatically retreating when he should be making strides toward healing. Instead of finding family in his own flesh and blood, he had allowed regret to trump connection. Would offering kindness and time to this little girl help him confront the chasm he felt with his daughter? Rising to his feet, he noticed the way the sun painted shadow and light upon the grass, illuminating the grounds of the park like a stage ready for action. What if he took this interaction as a step towards recovery, towards reintegrating into a life he felt exiled from? He could offer more than his absence to his daughter. He could redefine what it meant to be a father and a man. Maybe within this small, everyday moment, he would learn how to navigate his own fissures. "Want to show me how to play?" Jake asked, kneeling to her level, inviting curiosity. The girl grinned wide, her eyes sparkling with delight. In that instant, he felt hope building, a fragile ember newly kindled. But as they played, memories flashed behind his eyelids, each laugh a reminder of the time lost. Every bark from the pup ignited questions he didn't have answers to. What if reconnecting with this little girl was just an escape? He implored himself to remain vigilant, aware of the potential for deeper emotional investment. As the sun began to slip low in the sky, casting long shadows, Jake realized he was on the verge of confronting not only his own demons, but also the haunting specter of fatherhood. He needed to face his daughter soon, and the time was rapidly approaching. How could he embrace the complexities of small joys while bracing for the inevitable storm? The question lingered, heavy in the air, yet layered with the tang of anticipation. Perhaps the next moment would bring clarity. All he knew was that if he intended to forge something valuable, even with this girl, or with his daughter, he had to step into the light ready for the challenges that lay ahead. As he reached for the throw toy, a glimmer of determination flickered in his heart. The time had come to face not only his past but the uncertain future awaiting him. Would he seize this fleeting spark for all it was worth? The answer waited just beyond the horizon. As the laughter of the little girl echoed in his ears, Jake could feel the gravity of his choices pressing down on him with renewed intensity. Each throw of the ball, each joyous bark from the puppy, filled the space with an urgency he hadn't expected. A soft wind rustled through the trees, almost whispering reminders of the life he needed to reclaim, not just as a soldier, but as a father. With each toss, he was acutely aware of the contrast between this fleeting joy and the heavy weight of his responsibilities. He had skirted around the edges of fatherhood so long that it felt unreal to engage fully. Suddenly, he had to confront the truth. Playing with the girl was not merely an escape. It was a revelation of what he could become if only he dared to step into the role that frightened him most. "Can I throw it this time?" Jake asked, his heart racing in a way that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The girl nodded enthusiastically, handing over the small toy. As he lifted the toy above his head, he felt the warm embrace of determination wrap around his chest, pushing out the fears that had long been stifling him. "Ready? 1, 2, 3!" he shouted, flinging the toy across the field. The puppy dashed after it, and the girl sprinted alongside, her laughter mixing with the crisp sound of grass crunching underfoot. Jake couldn't remember the last time he had laughed, a real laugh, vibrant and unrestrained. This chaos around him felt new yet familiar, as if beneath the shadow of regret lay a longing for this very life. He didn't just want to relive moments of happiness. He craved the ability to create them. But with joy came reflection. He was struck by the realization that he wasn't merely playing pretend. He was laying the groundwork for what could be a future shared with his daughter. As that thought surfaced, a gnawing question reappeared. Could he extend the lessons learned from this little girl to embrace his own child? With every ounce of his spirit challenged, he wondered if he possessed the capacity to overcome his hesitation. The sun continued to dip lower, painting the sky with strokes of gold and crimson, as if it were bidding farewell to a day that had uncovered layers of himself he had thought buried. It was time to face the reality of his responsibilities. He envisioned his daughter's face, the way her smile could light up the darkest corners of his soul. How could he openly embrace the joy here without the heaviness of what awaited him at home? He glanced back at the girl, who was now lovingly cradling the puppy, and realized that her innocence served as a mirror. Perhaps his journey into reconnection didn't require grand gestures, but simple actions, a willingness to show up and be present. Each toss of the ball symbolized more than just play. It unfolded a vision of the kind of father he aspired to be. No more running away, he vowed silently, the words forming an anchor in his turbulent sea of self-doubt. To act effectively demanded courage, the kind that rose from facing fears rather than avoiding them. He began to formulate a plan. Concrete, uncomplicated steps toward restoring the bond that desperately needed healing. A gentle breeze swept through, teasing his resolve, as he found himself at the crossroads of emotion and action. What if he invited his daughter to experience moments like this? The warmth of laughter, the joy of play. How could he translate it into reconnecting with her? As he pondered this, a slow smile emerged, a prelude to a realization that felt as breathtaking as the sunset above. Next week, I'll call her, he promised himself aloud, feeling the breath of commitment leaving his lips. While shadows stretched across the park, his determination anchored him firmly in the present. The battle for reconnection was underway, and the temptation to retreat into darkness would no longer reign supreme. But as he turned to share his burgeoning insights with the girl, a flicker of anxiety ignited within. This newfound resolve felt precarious, almost surreal. Could he truly transform not only his relationship with her, but recast himself into the father he feared he had lost? As he prepared to share his vulnerable thoughts, the distant bark of another dog echoed ominously, a startling reminder of the unpredictable nature of life. What if confronting those realities unleashed buried fears he wasn't ready to face? The question hung in the air, teasing an escalating complexity in his journey ahead. This moment of newfound clarity was fleeting, and Jake knew the path wouldn't be easy. Would he summon the strength to redefine his role and accept the love that came with embracing vulnerability? The answer loomed just on the horizon, beckoning him to take the next step. The moment Jake returned home, the chaotic noise of the outside world faded, trapping him within the stillness and silence of his living room. He closed the door behind him, and the weight of his decision pressed heavier than any military gear. With his heart pounding, memory and doubt tangled within him, he glanced at the photograph on the mantel, a frozen smile of a little girl with brilliant, curious eyes, his daughter. The image stirred a haunting mixture of longing and guilt. How had he let time slip away so easily? Each moment of feeling lost echoed back, amplifying the pain of non-involvement. It was easy to become a ghost in his own life, but now, that thought ensnared him in chains of his own making. Just call her, he murmured, though confidence faltered at the bitter edge of his tongue. What if she didn't want to hear from him? What if his absence had rusted the bond they once shared? The question surged like a wave threatening to drown him. He paced the room, forcing himself to confront the inner turmoil. Each step felt like a small fracture in the wall of distance he'd constructed, and for the first time, Jake realized his hesitation stemmed from a deeper place, a fear of facing himself. Sinking onto the couch, he clenched his fists, imagining the words he might say. He could begin with an apology, but that simple act felt so complex. Apologies didn't really bridge gaps, did they? He thought back to the girl in the park, the ease with which they shared joy. Was reconnection truly so daunting? Or was it just him holding on to the past with a grip so tight it choked off the possibility of change? He reached for his phone, trembling fingers hovering above the screen. The weight of the moment ensnared him, seconds stretching interminably. Suddenly, he recalled the laughter, the little girl chasing the puppy, the essence of joy bubbling forth, untainted and uncomplicated. In her presence, he felt genuine again. Maybe he could draw on that feeling, let it inform the next steps, even as deep-rooted turmoil nagged at him. A decisive breath and his thumb pressed against his daughter's contact. The heart-tugging memory of her determined face steeled his resolve. Jake realized the act of reaching out was more than just a call. It became a deliberate act of vulnerability. Acknowledging that he was once a flawed father, a man shackled by experience but desperate to reclaim his place, became pivotal. Just before he could press call, an image flickered through his mind. A moment at the park when the girl had thrown the toy and her spirit soared along with it, unencumbered by fear of failure. Perhaps he too could throw himself into the unknown, trusting that nothing catastrophic would happen. In that instance, he recognized that growth required leaps into uncertainty. With a profound sense of purpose igniting within, Jake dialed. The phone rang, each tone resonating louder than the last. Would she pick up? The familiar fear of disappointment clawed at him. Yet with each ring, he felt just a little more grounded in his resolve. Please answer. He whispered into the emptiness, and there it was. She picked up. Hello? The sounds of her voice shattered the silence that had been patiently growing. His heart raced, the tension spilling inside him as he struggled to find words. Hi, it's your dad, he stammered, the weight of reality crashing down. He had stepped away from the precipice of anxiety. Now he was poised on the edge of transformation, a new chapter unfurling before him. But before he could find the right words, before the potential for reconnection could blossom, disturbing static pierced the line. Jake's breath caught. The phone flickered with a notification. Someone had posted something online. His heart sank as photos flooded the screen. His heartbeat quickened as he recognized one of the images. A group of soldiers, one of whom wore a familiar dog tag just behind the collar. The tag he lost amidst the chaos of war. The world swirled around him, spinning on a trajectory he hadn't anticipated. Could this unravel everything he just began to build? The ghost of his past beckoned again, demanding to be addressed. The phone slipped from his grasp as his thoughts careened, fear morphing into a cold grip around his heart. Would the truth he was starting to forge slip from his fingers like sand? Uncertain and anxious, Jake's sense of purpose hung perilously in balance, with everything now contingent on an outside force that had interrupted an inevitable conversation with his daughter. The tenuous thread of connection he had begun to weave trembled, facing an unseen maelstrom just as he leaned into the light. Could he ever reclaim the narrative? Would he step into the light or retreat again? The urgency clawed at him like a rallying cry, propelling him into a confrontation with the unexplored facets of his life. One thing was clear. The time had come to face his past and the choices that had haunted him for years. Jake barely registered the static on the line before it dissolved into the background noise of his racing thoughts. The image of the dog tag pinched his mind, sending shockwaves through his chest. Memories threatened to overwhelm him, deep reminders of a life littered with regrets and avoidance. He dropped the phone, its screen flickering like an old film reel, but his mind spun in a different direction. The image of his daughter's excited voice faded as he analyzed the photograph unveiled on his screen. The gathering of soldiers alongside an imposing structure whispered of camaraderie and memories he thought were buried too deep to resurface. Instinctively, he felt a tug, a connection he couldn't articulate. Was it guilt or recognition? Jake picked up the phone, disbelief etched on his features. The circumstances of his departure, voluntarily or otherwise, felt like a tangled web pulling at his courage. His entire adult life had been a set of walks away from his responsibilities, whether to serve or to heal. Now, a mere image had turned his thoughts upside down, demanding immediate attention. He sat on the edge of the couch, heart hammering in his chest. This image wasn't just another connection to the past, it was a call to action. Would he dare to peel back the layers of what he thought he had left behind? The desire to reach out to his daughter countered the heavy weight of this resurfaced memory. Jake recognized that to fully grasp the future he hoped to mend with her, He needed to confront the echoes of his choices. He opened the photos again, fingers trembling as he zoomed in on the familiar face of one soldier. The unfinished stitch of their shared past tugged at him, demanding recognition. "Is that you, Miles?" he murmured. The memory of a fellow soldier who had saved his life during a skirmish flooded back, a bond forged in chaos, yet now draped in secrecy. He had thought the tag lost, a symbol of a life left behind. The last time he saw Miles, they'd promised to look out for one another. But life had forged a distinct path that led Jake far away from that promise. The phone buzzed again, and Jake flinched at its proximity. Reminders were relentless. This was it. The call to choose life over the shadows. He stood up, pacing in the confined space of his living room. Each footfall was a deliberate calculation of his willingness to confront whatever awaited him, be it a reunion or a closure. He wrestled with the determination brewing inside him, the urge to find Miles and understand the connections that were re-emerging. "The past doesn't own me," he whispered, trying to steady his racing heart. This was a chance to reclaim control both in his life and with his daughter. Yet the path was fraught with the fear of rejection and the uncertainty of confrontation. Jake hesitated. What would Miles say? The thought echoed, prodding him forward. Scrolling through the notifications on his phone, adrenaline surged as he saw a comment that caught his eye. "It's never too late, man." The words resonated more profoundly than he anticipated. Each tap of the screen felt calculated, a leap toward a conversation he hesitated to pursue. Finally, Jake composed a message and prepared to send it to Miles. After a moment's pause, he hit send. Confessions and secrets could no longer possess a stranglehold on him. This was the moment where vulnerability married bravery. With the message sent and hope flaring in his heart, he turned back towards his daughter's number hovering on his screen. Taking a deep breath, he shifted gears, realizing that perhaps it wasn't just about reconnecting with her, but also confronting the unresolved piece that was Miles, a tapestry of stories that needed untangling. As he pondered his next move, his phone vibrated again. An unexpected incoming message illuminated the screen. "We need to talk." Jake felt the world tilt beneath him. Would this conversation alter more than just his path forward with his daughter? Or would it finally shed light on the shadows cast by his past? The flicker of resolve ignited within him. This was the crossroads where fear met the potential for understanding, where the remnants of his earlier decisions awaited him. What had he gotten himself into? Jake's heart raced, each pulse echoing his growing trepidation. The message from Miles was short, but its weight felt monumental. Time was halting, waiting, allowing doubt and determination to duel within him. What did Miles want? This wasn't just about reconnecting with the past. It was a potential reckoning, a collision of old loyalties and new aspirations. He stood, muscles tense, staring at the blinking screen as if it were a portal to clarity. "The past doesn't own me," he repeated under his breath, but could belief alone relinquish the years of guilt and hesitation? The truth was murky, intertwined with memories that shaped every decision Jake had made since departing the military. With deliberate movements, he sat back down, mirroring the restlessness that swirled in his gut. He rubbed the back of his neck, a futile attempt to ease the churning thoughts. The fleeting vision of his daughter brought warmth, but that warmth was quickly overshadowed by the specter of his past actions. He couldn't allow regret, however strong, to paralyze him again. Jake's fingers danced over the screen, drafting and discarding responses to Miles's cryptic invitation. What if he's angry? That question loomed large. The weight of broken promises trailed behind him like a shadow, darkening even this small light of hope. Then a thought struck him that rendered his apprehension almost trivial. Miles had been a brother in arms, someone who had survived the chaos of combat alongside him. The image of their last encounter, a hasty promise made through grit and gravel, was laced with uncertainty. What had he done to uphold that vow? Resolutely, Jake chose not to dwell on it. He needed to act, not just as a soldier, but as a man seeking redemption. He settled on a message that felt true to his intent, a blend of curiosity and bluntness. "I'm in." Hitting send, he felt a surge of relief, followed instantly by anxiety. The decision had been made, Now the wait began, each second pressing like a knot in his chest. As he leaned back in his chair, another thought gnawed at him. What would his daughter think if she knew he was communicating with Miles? Would she understand? Conviction washed over him once more. Jake drew a deep breath, mentally preparing himself for what he needed to do next. If reconnecting with Miles meant confronting the past, he needed to practice this new honesty in every corner of his life. It was time to reach out to his daughter. He clenched his jaw. The thought of gauging her reaction was nerve-wracking, but the motivation behind the emotion was undeniable. Navigating his phone, he hesitated at her contact. He could hear her laughter echoing in his mind, reminding him of the gap their absence had forged. "I owe it to her," he whispered. She deserved the truth, just as much as he did. He scrolled through the messages they had exchanged, her youthful enthusiasm juxtaposed against his distant, stilted responses. Regret pricked at him. Taking a final, fortifying breath, he began typing. "Hey, sweetheart, can we talk? There's something important I need to share with you." A question lingered in the silence, a heavy, unrelenting weight demanding answers that he wasn't entirely certain he could provide. As he pressed send, a chill ran down his spine, and he felt stripped raw, vulnerable yet ready. Moments stretched, each beep of the phone amplifying his worries. Would she respond positively? Would she harbor disappointment? And then, the acuteness of the silence in his apartment weighed heavily. Visibly shaken but determined, Jake reminded himself that this was part of the change he desperately sought. Clarity often came from facing your own flaws, confronting the difficult truths that made up your history. Just as he began to question whether it had been the right move, his phone buzzed again. The screen lit up with a name he hadn't expected. "Hello?" came the voice from the other end, a blend of surprise and caution that struck him like a lightning bolt. "Is this really you?" All doubts momentarily dissipated, replaced by a single realization. This conversation was just the beginning, and whatever transpired next would lead him deeper into the realities he had long evaded. In that moment, an unexpected spark of energy ignited. What truths would he discover? Would he reclaim the pieces of himself lost in the rubble of his past? More importantly, how would these revelations reshape his connection with both Miles and his daughter? This was the moment that mattered, the fork in the road where every layer of vulnerability peeled back, readiness for confrontation. Jake braced himself. The journey ahead promised to be anything but predictable. Jake's heart pounded in response to his daughter's voice. It was both familiar and foreign, like an echo from a life he'd kept at bay. "Yeah, it's me," he managed, fighting against the rough edges of uncertainty. He could almost see her wide eyes on the other end, searching for reassurance. "Where have you been?" Her tone was laced with a mix of longing and the innocent ire of a child wronged. Instantly, regret wove its way back into Jake's consciousness, a painful reminder of time lost, words unspoken, and emotions neglected. I've been here just trying to figure things out," he replied, each word a step he needed to take on a precarious tightrope. Her silence hung between them like a curtain drawn too tightly. Did she even know how deeply he'd wanted to be there for her? "Figure things out. You could have done that with me." The quiver in her voice threatened to crack him wide open. "It feels like you've chosen everything over me." The accusation struck harder than any wound he'd encountered in battle. He had fought enemies on foreign soil, but this emotional battlefield was far more daunting. How could he explain the cocoon of shame that had held him hostage, suffocating his intentions? "You're right. I should have been there," he admitted, his voice thick with the weight of his truth. "I've been a coward, but I'm here now, and I want to be part of your life again. Before, you just disappeared. I thought you didn't want me." Her words laid out starkly, each syllable a piercing arrow that shot straight through Jake's defenses. "I need to tell you everything, about why I left, about what I've had to face." The admission felt monumental. He couldn't keep hiding behind the curtain of silence. His own fears became secondary. Her sense of abandonment was paramount. "Why now?" she asked, a note of skepticism edging into her voice. "What changed?" Here's where it got complicated. Miles's message had ignited a flame, reminding Jake of unresolved bonds. He had a choice: to keep wading through the murky waters of regret, or swim toward the shores of honesty and vulnerability. His decision began solidifying. I realized that I can't move forward without taking responsibility for my past. Not just with my life, but with you, he said quietly, searching mentally for the right words. I want to rebuild our relationship, starting today. The pause was tense, filled with unspooled emotions. So, what does that mean? It means I want to talk, more than we have been. I want us to start fresh. A small smile crept into Jake's thoughts, an image of laughter and shared moments. But he also recognized the barriers he'd be fighting. Trust could not be rebuilt overnight. What do you want to talk about? She asked cautiously. Everything. I want to know you, what you love, what scares you, what makes you happy. He needed to bridge that divide, to understand the girl she'd become. A chuckle broke through the somber tone, cutting through the fog of fear. You actually want to know what scares me? I thought you just want to be around for the fun stuff. Every part of you is important to me, even if I haven't shown it. I'll do whatever it takes. The conviction behind his words felt like lava bubbling beneath a crust, ready to flow into a new path. As they navigated the conversation, Jake began feeling cracks forming in his barriers. Her laughter, the small bursts of joy he could still feel, chipped away at the heavy silence he'd cemented himself in. It wasn't just urgent moments with Miles loomed ahead. He was at the precipice of change in his own heart. What about Miles? She asked suddenly. You mentioned him before. The mention of Miles brought a rush of emotions back to Jake's mind. He's part of my past, someone I need to face. I don't have all the answers yet, but he matters. She paused, considering his response. So, why not face him together? Maybe it will help you. Maybe, he allowed, the synergy of clarity crystallizing. He wouldn't just confront Miles alone. Both familial and fraternal ties could intertwine in this newfound journey. Okay, she said after a moment. But you better not disappear again. I won't, he promised, fierce resolve wrapping around his words. I want to be part of your life. I choose you. Feeling invigorated yet vulnerable, Jake hung up, the uneasiness of the moment replaced with determination. This connection with his daughter was forging a path he hadn't anticipated, one that called him to arms not against a physical threat, but against the ghosts of his past. What if facing Miles was the key to unlocking truths he still hadn't fully embraced? His heart raced again, this time not from fear, but from the understanding that the past was a battleground, and Jake was ready to step back onto the field, this time with his daughter by his side. And in that moment, a text interrupted his thoughts, a message that illuminated a deeper dark. We need to talk. Something has happened. It was Miles. Would this be the confrontation he so desperately avoided? The journey was just beginning. Jake's pulse quickened as he read Miles' message, an unexpected emergency signal that brought forth not only frustration, but a sense of urgency. He felt the walls around him shift, as if the ground beneath his feet had started to sway. The initial clarity he'd gained from conversing with his daughter now threatened to dissolve under the looming task he'd set for himself. Miles. Just saying the name conjured up a storm of memories. The duo had been inseparable once, bound together by shared experiences and battles on foreign shores. Yet somewhere along the way, betrayal and hurt had solidified a chasm between them. Jake took a deep breath, grounding himself in the present. This was not only about confrontation, but about the chance to redefine who he was, both as a father and a friend. He scrolled back to the text, his thumbs hovering over the keyboard as anxiety swirled within. The message had been vague, almost ominous, which only escalated his trepidation. What could have happened, he wondered. Seconds stretched out, filled with unspoken questions that reverberated in his mind. The revelation that he intended to face Miles alongside his daughter weighed heavily on him. It wouldn't be easy to navigate that landscape of raw emotions, both his and hers. Would she be truly ready to confront the man who had once embodied the pinnacle of trust in Jake's life? His phone vibrated again. Another message from Miles. Meet me at the old diner. It's important. The words hit him below the belt, echoing perceptions of their shared past. The old diner held memories of late-night strategizing, gut-busting laughter, and the thrill of youthful ambition. Yet now, that place represented something darker, an altar of their fracturing friendship. Jake locked his phone, staring out the window at the world moving about him. The nostalgia pulled at him, inviting a flood of emotions he'd tried to keep suppressed. He sensed the odd dichotomy within himself, an eagerness to heal, while simultaneously grappling with the fear that shook him to his core. He gathered his jacket and stepped outside, the chill of the evening air biting at his skin. Time seemed to ooze as he fought against the impending confrontation. Jake had convinced himself that every heart-pounding breath would lead him one step closer to uncovering the truth about Miles, about their friendship, and most importantly, about himself. Arriving at the diner, the neon sign flickered ominously, its glow casting shadows that seemed all too familiar yet foreign. Inside, the wooden booths whispered tales of past camaraderie. He spotted Miles in a corner, hunched over a cup of coffee, his visage hardened by time and concealed pain. Initiating the conversation would require methodical planning. "Hey," Jake said, the two syllables weighted with both hope and trepidation. Miles looked up, a mix of surprise and ambivalence etching his features. "Didn't think you'd show," he muttered, barely making eye contact. Jake slid into the opposite booth, grappling with the emotions swelling between them. The air thickened with memories of laughter now buried under piles of resentment. He wasn't there to relitigate the past, but to recalibrate the present. "I got your message. What's going on?" Miles ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed bitterly nostalgic to Jake. "It's about your daughter. She deserves to know the truth." The implications hung heavy over their table. Jake's heart pounded as he feasted on the weight of Miles's words. How much did he know? How deeply connected were they? The conversation was morphing into uncharted territory, revealing layers he had not anticipated. "What do you mean?" Jake's voice was steady, but inside, the tumult of thoughts churned restlessly. "Things I didn't tell you before. This could change everything for both of you," Miles replied, his tone low, laced with a blend of caution and urgency. The door swung open behind them, and a gust of wind brought a chill into the warm diner, stirring Jake's emotions anew. Would revelations be the very cornerstone needed to rebuild, or would they serve as a wrecking ball to the teetering edifice of their shared history? The moment teetered precariously on the edge of revelation or devastation. One thing was certain. Jake was about to learn just how far the past shadowed both their lives. As Miles leaned in, Jake braced himself for the truths that would shape their futures, feeling an almost electric current of anxiety coursing through him. Would this reckoning bring closure or catastrophe? The diner buzzed faintly around them, an inconsequential backdrop to the unfolding drama between two fractured souls. And then, with the weight of a lifetime pressing down, Jake realized the moment of truth had arrived. Jake's mind raced as he locked eyes with Miles, the air thickening with the unspoken weight of their shared past. Each creak of the booth beneath him felt amplified, a harbinger of the truths ready to spill forth and reshape their lives. He steadied himself, refusing to let the nostalgia drown him. Now was not the time for reflection. It was a moment for action and comprehension. "What's the truth?" Jake pressed. Each word dripped in urgency, echoing his intent to cut straight to the heart of the matter. He sensed his daughter's implications swirling like dark clouds overhead. This was bigger than their rift, threatening to engulf everything he had fought for. Miles leaned back, a flicker of indecision crossing his eyes. Jake noticed the shadows that danced around him, each flicker reminiscent of their long-lost companionship, the light-heartedness of shared dreams, overshadowed by the darkness of betrayal. "I thought keeping you out of it would protect you both," Miles confessed, each word carefully chosen. Jake leaned in, the instinct to protect his daughter igniting within him. "Protect us from what?" he questioned, a simmering tension threading through his voice, resonating with the determination he'd been cultivating since their last conversation. "The truth about her mother," Miles whispered, his tone heavy with the gravity of the admission. which shattered the fragile balance of their conversation. The words struck Jake like an icy wave, washing over him with confusion and dread. He had long forged a narrative in his mind about his family's history, one that protected his daughter from the real terrors of their shared past. "What do you mean?" The question slipped between clenched teeth, poised on the precipice of anger and fear. "There are things she deserves to know, things I wish I had told you years ago. About your daughter's heritage, about the decisions that have chased both our families since before she was born," Miles continued, his eyes narrowing as if trying to decipher whether Jake could handle the fallout. Jake's heartbeat thundered in his ears as fragmented memories of conversations and once-ignored signs flooded back into focus. How had he been so blind? The whirlwind of emotions crashed against him, colliding with the protective walls he'd built around his daughter. "This is too much. Too sudden," he snapped, the vulnerability in his voice seeping through his defensive armor. He wondered if Miles had laid traps along the way instead of helping him navigate the storm. But that was the battle of their shared past, defining trust in a friendship fractured by secrets. "You think the truth will hurt her?" Miles asked, his gaze steady, forcing Jake to confront the fear he desperately wished to sidestep. "Or will it only leave her with unanswered questions?" Jake's throat tightened. What if guarding her from the past only festered a rift down the line? What if he couldn't protect her only by obscuring truths that demanded to be brought to light? This was the first real crisis of parenthood he hadn't fully anticipated, his decisions shaping a future moment by moment, not just for himself, but for his daughter. "Look, you've got to know I can't let you just toss these revelations around without preparation," Jake countered, a semblance of control returning as he contemplated his next move. If Miles had crucial information, how could he harness it without surrendering emotional chaos? "I wouldn't drop this on you without a reason, Jake," Miles replied, the weight of regret coloring his words as he leaned forward. "There's more to your daughter than you realize. You have to confront this together." Cool air wrapped around Jake as he considered the monumental shift in dynamics. Could he muster the courage to reveal this fissured history to his daughter? Would she be able to bear the burdens that had reshaped their lives before they even knew the truth? The diner buzzed around them, the casual din of other voices feeling almost insulting against the gravity of their conversation. They were caught in a tempest, each note of laughter from the other tables ringing hollow against their urgent dialogue. In that moment, Jake felt the pounding conviction settle deep within him. He wasn't only a father. He was a bridge to understanding, a conduit through which his daughter could one day sift through the confusion of their lineage. "Let's make a plan," Jake insisted, resolve hardening. "We prepare her together. I need to know you're on board with that." Miles nodded slowly, and for the first time, they seemed to share an understanding that extended beyond their fractured friendship. As Jake absorbed the weight of both their futures on the brink of revelation, he sensed a flicker of untapped strength within himself, coaxing him to confront this pivotal moment, not just as an act of reconciliation, but a transformative step for both him and his daughter. Just as a flicker of possibility ignited, Miles's expression shifted momentarily, a flash of pain. "And what happens when the truth isn't what you think?" Jake's breath caught, tension sparking anew. Was he prepared for what lay ahead? The storm was brewing, much like their past, with no clear horizon in sight. Uncertainty loomed, urging him to confront not only the revelations about his daughter, but the very essence of his own identity as a father. With each impending word from Miles, Jake braced for the inevitable unraveling of a life he thought he understood, feeling the ground shift yet again beneath him. The moment of truth was closer than he'd ever been prepared for, and just as daunting. What devastating truths awaited him, infused within revelations that would change everything. Miles leaned in, ready for the next step, but Jake could only wonder what dark corners of their past awaited their revelation. Would he find clarity, or would he fall deeper into the abyss? Jake sat in the diner, the words hanging between him and Miles like the heavy atmosphere before a storm. Each moment stretched unbearably as he contemplated the gravity of what lay ahead. They both knew that the truth about his daughter's heritage wouldn't just disrupt their lives, it could shatter the fragile bonds he was trying to mend. "Let's make a plan," he insisted, attempting to regain control. We need to prepare her together. It felt bold, confident, spoken with a newfound earnestness. Jake was determined to face whatever twisted truths lay ahead, not just for himself, but for his daughter. Miles nodded slowly, a deliberate agreement evident in his demeanor. All right. But we need to choose our words carefully. The impact could be monumental. Jake felt a rush of adrenaline. This wasn't just about protecting his daughter anymore. It was also about ensuring she understood her origins, the complexities woven into her lineage, and the mistakes that defined their past. It's time she knows what's truly been going on. She deserves the whole story. As awareness settled in, Jake took note of how he felt. This was choice flooded with responsibility, a doorway to a new future not just for his daughter but for himself. They could navigate this path together and smooth the jagged edges of confusion. Tomorrow then, Jake proposed, his voice steadying. We can bring her here and talk things through. And after that, anyone else you think should be included? The air crackled with determination as Jake visualized the conversation. Each word he would share would bridge the chasm that left him alone for too long. Miles seemed to contemplate this for a moment before replying. I think it might be best to make it just us initially, to keep things simple. Agreed, Jake said, feeling the weight of the upcoming meeting settle into a resolute commitment. I owe her that one-on-one time. The thought of seeing her again ignited warmth within him, a light illuminating the darkness he'd fought against. Days spent lost in regret rushed back to him, each delicious moment twisted with the ache of absence. But now, the seed of connection had been planted, and he wasn't going to let it die. The drive home grew vivid with images of his daughter's laughter, the memory evoking a swell of motivation turning regret into actionable courage. That's the plan, he said, pulling himself back into focus. Tomorrow we tackle it head-on, and maybe, just maybe, I can finally be the father she deserves. That night, sleep came fitfully as his mind churned with anticipation. Jake imagined how the conversation might unfold, worrying about their reactions and how exposed he'd feel. When morning light broke through his curtains, illuminating his room, Jake felt a renewed zeal wrap around him like a well-worn blanket. He gathered his thoughts and mentally prepared for what lay ahead. This was more than just a conversation. It symbolized the beginning of his transformation. He envisioned how he could embrace vulnerability while simultaneously providing reassurance to his daughter. As the time approached, Jake's heart raced, anticipation melding with anxiety. He arrived at the diner early, seeking solace in its familiarity. When he saw them, his daughter and Miles approaching, shoulders squared, expressions uneven, an avalanche of emotions surged within him. The moment felt charged with significance, bridging old divides while forging new paths. Here we go, he thought, steeling himself for this new reality. Hey, sweetheart. He knelt down to greet her, seeing the sparkle in her eyes, and her inquisitive nature reminded him of her mother. Could she somehow process what they were about to unveil? She smiled, though confusion flickered behind those bright eyes. Hi, Dad. The word felt exquisitely fragile, as if she were uncertain of its meaning or substance. Jake reached forward, holding her tiny hands in his, forcing himself to breathe through the moment. Do you recall some of the stories I told you about where I served? He began, his words steady, rehearsed in his mind yet fluid now in the air between them. I remember some, she said slowly, her expression shifting into one of anticipation mixed with uncertainty. Today, we're going to talk about something equally important. What you have to know about your family, and about me. Jake could feel the tension surge. Miles offered him an encouraging glance while he shuffled closer, heart racing with anticipation. Dad, you're scaring me, she whispered, a tremble in her small frame. Each syllable felt like a crack in the facade Jake had constructed in a futile attempt to shield her. This isn't about scaring you, he urged gently. It's about being honest, allowing us the chance to connect, truly connect. With that, Jake hesitated just long enough. As he glanced at Miles, feeling their past ripple beneath them, a calmness washed over him. This was the moment to reshape his narrative, to demonstrate accountability and the willingness to protect while also confronting the shadows of their shared history. "I've wanted nothing more than to be a part of your life," he said, voice warm. "And now, despite all the mistakes I've made, I want to start fresh. So I need your help too. Together we'll unravel these stories and set things right." "Can we do that?" she asked quietly with a hint of belief blossoming. "Yes," Jake affirmed, feeling the electricity of the moment and its potential. With each word shared, he could feel hope replace the fear of consequence, and the realization that this act of storytelling was a profound gift to them both. As they began the series of conversations, nerves surged with every revelation. Truths unfolded like spring petals, and Jake knew they were both taking monumental steps toward healing, a journey of understanding that would redefine who they were to each other. This was the moment that solidified his desires, not just to reclaim his responsibilities, but to embark on the intricate dance of parenthood. The discomfort, vulnerability, and earnest emotions spun a trajectory that tethered him closer to the heart of fatherhood. With renewed determination, he realized they were walking hand in hand not just through the task of navigating complex truths, but toward a path marked by newfound love, uncommon resilience, and audacious hope. At that moment, in the flickering light of the diner, Jake finally understood. Journeys aren't defined solely by the past, but illuminated through the courage to connect and embrace growth. And growing, that was just the beginning. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that delve into the heart of transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm with support. Your engagement matters immensely. Comment below with your reactions and theories about how our characters evolve through their challenges. Your insights could spark enlightening discussions. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the impact of personal overcoming stories. Let's broaden the circle of those inspired by transformation. Don't wait even one more second to share.